Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, if you are a recurring viewer or a subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. I really appreciate you all being here today. It is December 31st, 2023, so New Year's Eve, issuing in the new year, which is mind-blowing. This year has gone so fast for me personally. That I wanted to make one last video for the year and do a reading update. I didn't end up doing a reading update last weekend. I put out a different video instead, so I have a couple extra books more than usual to discuss that I'm really excited to share with you. So the first book that I want to talk about is How to Behave Badly in Elizabethan England by Ruth Goodman. And this is a book that I listened to on audio, so I don't have anything to hold up for it, but I will put the cover of the book up here on the screen. This is a super fun, super informative look into essentially Elizabethan manners and etiquette, or the standards of society. It's sort of done in a tongue-in-cheek way, as the subtitle of the book suggests. However, it really is just a look into the everyday manners and etiquette of Elizabethan England. And not super surprisingly, most of the etiquette standards of the 16th century roll over into the etiquette standards that we have today. But it was just such a fascinating book, and Ruth Goodman is an infectious author. Her enthusiasm just comes right off the page, and you can tell how much she is in love with the subjects that she writes about. And I absolutely loved her How to Be a Tudor, and I have her How to Be a Victorian on my TBR to get to. I really enjoy her writing style, so I would highly recommend that to anyone who is interested in learning more sort of about the everyday details of Elizabethan decorum and behavior. The next book that I finished, I read in ebook form, and that was The Life of Elizabeth I by Alison Weir. And I have talked about this a little bit in the past on some of my other update videos. It's taken me a little bit longer than I was expecting to get through it, about 9 days, but I really enjoyed it. This was the first sort of cradle-to-grave biography of Elizabeth I that I've read, so I really didn't have a whole lot of footing on the subject matter at all when I started. The only other book about Elizabeth I that I had read was The Temptation of Elizabeth Tudor by Elizabeth Norton, and that focused a lot more on her sort of early years in power and her sort of ascension to power, whereas obviously in this full-length biography, we get a lot more time of her as queen. One of my favorite things about this biography was the fact that I felt that Alison Weir focused a lot more on Elizabeth's psychological makeup and sort of what made her tick, and the more psychological elements of her life, really analyzing sort of how she became the ruler and the woman that she was. The writing itself was also very gripping, very entertaining. It didn't feel dense or dry at all. The only reason it took me a little bit longer than I expected to finish was just because I was enjoying it so much. I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to rush through it. So I decided just to sort of read it along with some other things and take my time with it. And I'm very glad that I did. The next book that I read was also on my Kindle, and that was Ian Mortimer's The Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England. And this fits right into the theme of this week, which was apparently Elizabethan history. I've recently gotten really into reading Elizabeth Tudor and Elizabethan history, and it's sort of one and the same, because the Elizabethan era she was the last monarch of the House of Tudor, so they're sort of interchangeable in a way. But the Time Traveler's Guide here is absolutely fantastic, and this is a series that Ian Mortimer has, and I believe it's 3 or 4 books. He has one on Regency England, one on medieval England, this one, and then possibly one more that I am forgetting, but it may just be those 3. But this is very similar to Ruth Goodman's book, except that I feel it goes into even more minute detail on the everyday sort of coming and goings of Elizabethan society. And as the title suggests, this is written in very much a travel log, travel guide format. And so the chapters give details on absolutely every aspect of the time period that you would experience if you were sort of just dropped down right in the middle of the period. So it goes over everything from the foods you would eat to the types of inns or houses you would be staying at, the types of clothes you'd be wearing, the transportation you would use, the quality of the roads that you would be traveling on. Some of my favorite aspects of this book were towards the end when it was talking about the sort of the leisure time that was spent and the things that people would do when they weren't working. And a lot of that was the theater. They would go to the theater. And so there is a lot of the history of performing arts, history of English theater. So a lot of stuff covering Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. Just some sort of really interesting stuff around that topic, which I enjoyed reading because I don't know a whole lot about the history of theater. I don't know a whole lot about Shakespeare sort of as a historical figure. I know a little bit about his plays, but I don't know a whole lot about him personally. So being able to read some of that information was really interesting. And the writing style itself is just very quick. It's short chapters, so it really pulls you through the narrative. You feel like you're making a lot of progress, so it keeps you reading, so it reads fairly quickly. So I would definitely recommend this one to anyone wanting more, a more detailed glimpse into the Elizabethan period. The next book that I read was Victoria's Daughters by Jerrold and Packard. And I hauled this one a couple videos ago. This is a book that I was gifted at Christmas, and I really enjoyed this one. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it because I had read a decent amount of sort of opposing reviews of some people saying that they felt that it was sort of very negative towards Victoria, and others saying that they absolutely loved it and they felt that it wasn't negative towards Victoria in any way. And I would say that I found this to be a really interesting look into Queen Victoria's period, sort of as a mother, which of course was for a very long time because she had 9 children. But I think it shines a lot of interesting light on Queen Victoria's psychological makeup, particularly with her daughter, Beatrice. My personal favorite storyline from this book was her relationship with her daughter, Beatrice, who she really wanted to have as her personal secretary. And Victoria was very protective of her daughter Beatrice and didn't want her to really have any of her own autonomy at all, wanted to keep her very sheltered and very close to her, which I found interesting given Victoria's youth of being very much constantly observed and never let alone, and how that really was very irritating to her, obviously, but then sort of the reciprocation that then she gave to her own daughter almost without really even knowing it, I found very interesting. This does mainly focus on Victoria's daughters, obviously, as the title suggests, but it does give a little bit of the story as well of her relationship with her 2 sons as well. I would highly recommend this one to anyone who wants to know more about the sort of inner workings of Victoria and her family life, particularly her life as a mother. A little bit of her relationship with Albert is touched on in here, and a little bit of politics is touched on, and a little bit of sort of just general history of Queen Victoria. It's definitely a book that you would want to already know a little bit about the time period. You would want to know a little bit about Queen Victoria already, because it's not a biography of Queen Victoria, so there are a lot of names and events, names mentioned and then events sort of made reference to but not fully explained. That could be a little bit confusing if you didn't already have a little bit of context for them in the past. But if you already do have a little bit of context for the time period and for the figures, it was a really enjoyable read, and I would certainly recommend it. Then I moved on to Below the Edge of Darkness, and this is another book that I was gifted at Christmas. And this is, I think it's the 3rd book that I have read about deep sea life, essentially. And this one has a particular focus on bioluminescence, so creatures that generate their own light in the deep sea, which is such a fascinating topic. This is also, it's a blended memoir with science, so it talks a lot it goes a lot into the author Edith Widder's personal story of her exposure to marine biology and what made her fall in love with the field. Goes through her time at Tufts University in the late 70s when she experienced a horrible accident from a surgery, a spinal fusion that went poorly, that caused her to be in the hospital for an incredibly long stretch of time. A very painful time period for her, losing sight for a short period of time. So it sort of goes between her struggle on the road to recovery and then kind of up through into all of the experiences that she had in the field as a marine biologist, and then also has the actual nature science portion of the book talking about deep sea creatures of bioluminescent nature and the way that they generate their light and the reason that they do so. I did enjoy having the personal memoir element to this book. However, there were times when I wished that those could have been toned down a little bit to give more science forward approach at times. But still, it was very enjoyable. It's not very long at all. It's just right over 300 pages, so I read it in a couple of days. The writing's very engaging. It's very quick, so it's not a slog at all. If you are into nature writing, if you like that blend of nature writing and personal memoir as well, I would certainly recommend this one. To me, it's very similar to Helen Scales' The Abyss, which is one that I read in 2021, which focuses on deep sea life as well, but is also sort of the personal blended memoir and with the nature science writing as well. But if you are into that sort of writing of the mixture between memoir and nature writing, I would definitely recommend this one. It was really enjoyable. And then for what I'm currently reading, yesterday evening, I started the Ottoman Endgame, War, Revolution, and the Making of the Modern Middle East, 1908 to 1923. And this is another one that I hauled recently, and so far, I am enjoying it. It is a subject that I know next to nothing about. It's also my first time to read anything by McMeekin. I have a couple of his other books on my shelf, but I haven't yet read them. And so far, I'm enjoying his writing style. It's very readable. It is very dense, though, and there is quite a lot of information packed in. So I'm reading it fairly slowly just because it's names that are new to me. It's events and place names that are new to me. So I'm trying to sort of take my time and absorb as much as I can. I've made it to a little bit over 100 pages. I think it's 140. So almost to 200 pages there. So I originally wanted to finish this by tomorrow. I don't think that's going to be happening just because I still have about 400 pages or so left. But I'm hoping to maybe finish it in the next couple of days, and I'll keep updates coming out as I keep reading it and as sort of more is coming to light for me. But so far, I'm finding it really informative, shining light on a lot of stuff that I didn't know anything about before. So that's always a really good thing. And that is everything for the reading update. I am not sure what my reading plans will be going straight into 2024. For this year, for 2023, I didn't set any Goodreads reading goals or anything like that, and I really just wanted to naturally see what I wanted to read and just sort of go with the flow. However, for next year, I may do something a little bit more structured for my reading. I'm not sure yet. So when any of those decisions sort of come around and I lock into my reading plan for 2024, I will definitely be making a video talking about that. But that is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.